Welcome into Celtics pregame live, everybody. I'm Justin Lowe. Alongside with me, I have Ian and I have Seamus. We're getting set for the Celtics and Raptors tip-off in just 25 minutes. Guys, how are we feeling? Celtics finally back home at the Garden. We'll get into the injury report in just a little bit. Celtics debuting some new jerseys. How are we feeling?
This is going to be a great night. We're going to get our first win tonight. I'm guaranteeing it right now, like Joe Namath. I'm guaranteeing it. The Raptors are not that good this year. I have them at the 11 seed, but I think they might be 12 because I had the Pacers under them for some reason. But I don't think the Raptors are that good this season. And with the crowd tonight, like we're already seasoned now. This team is already seasoned from that MSG crowd. Tonight, they're going to be rooting for them now. The crowd will be rooting for them. And it's just going to be a great night, I feel.
I love the enthusiasm, Seamus. I'm not going to go out and outright guarantee the Celtics are going to win tonight, but I'm really excited. It's been so long since fans have been able to see a game. We had game 4 of the playoffs, but it's been so long since a lot of fans have been able to see the Celtics play all at the same time. So the energy in there is going to be insane.
And now we're going to get into the injury report. But just before that, let's quickly recap the Celtics and Knicks game really quick, because although the Celtics lost, that was one of the most historic opening nights, if not the most historic opening night game the NBA has probably ever seen. Jaylen Brown, 46 points, fresh off of quarantine. Julius Randle and Evan Fournier combined for 67 points. Now, something that stood out to Seamus big time was Fournier had 18 points with 59 seconds left in the fourth quarter. He ended up with 32. How did that happen?
We discussed this on the show the other night. Guys just going under screens and not communicating screens, period. It was just amazing to go back and look at the film and see how many times someone either went over a screen and didn't fight or went under a screen and didn't fight or went under a screen and didn't communicate on a switch. And it was just really baffling to see how open those Fournier shots were, especially in overtime. That's, Kyrie used to say this, and I don't want to shout out Kyrie, but that's the winning moment of the game, right? Those are the winning moments. You have to make the winning plays in those moments. And the Celtics just leaving Fournier wide open on the perimeter every time, those aren't winning plays. I hope the same thing doesn't happen with the Raptors tonight, because we know the Raptors have a couple of flamethrowers with them, Vanvleet, and they just signed Svi Mykhailiuk over the offseason. That's a little bit of a concern for me tonight with the Celtics, is defending the perimeter. But the other night, you have there isn't much further down the team can go, quite honestly.
Yeah, that game against the Knicks was just it was the most heartbreaking and the most insane game I ever watched in my life. It felt at least the initial shock of it was your team is down by what? We were down by 6 or 8 with 9 seconds left. Brown hits a huge 3. Randall hits free throws, and then Smart hits a huge 3 to tie the game at the end of regulation. And then the game was just absolutely craziness from there. What did they hit? 10 shots in a row between the both of them, hitting 3 shots at the start of overtime. It was 7 for 7 or something like that. They just went back and forth. It was just insane to see. But like Seamus said, you can't really go lower from here. And the defense needs to step up. We can't be allowing 138 points to the Knicks, even if it's overtime.
Especially when that's our thing too. That's been our whole persona coming into the season too. So
yeah, sort of how Brad Stevens has constructed this roster, right? Where we saw a departure of Kemba Walker, who was a strictly offensive power, and then we bring in a Dennis Schroeder for a whopping $5.9 million, which is amazing. But, you make those defensive adjustments as the season goes on. Luckily, that was only 1 out of 82. Let's kind of focus on something positive about that game, because the Celtics had a lot of players that did perform well. Although they only went 7 players deep out of a possible 15, Jaylen Brown scored 46 points in a game where he was questionable until about an hour before tip. Guys, a questionable up until the tip, comes out, drops 46 points, says he wanted to play because Ime Udoka, this is his first game ever. Obviously, there was an inhaler on the sideline if Jaylen Brown had needed to use it. He was just 4 short of 50 points, fellas. How do we feel about that? Career high.
He could have got 50 points, quite honestly, in overtime. He missed the dunk, and then I'm sure there's another shot he could have made along the way.
He missed 2 free throws, too.
But that game being at Madison Square Garden, the fact that that 46 came at MSG, like there are some teams and buildings that you score 40 plus in, and no one's going to really blink. Like, if you score 40 on the Grizzlies in their building in FedEx Forum, or say the Kings at the Golden One Center, like no one's really paying attention to that. But Madison Square Garden is the mecca of basketball. And the fact that Jaylen Brown was able to perform so well after coming off of COVID in that building just says so much about his game and his work, just period, over each and every offseason that he's been in the NBA thus far. Like, he's only, 25 years old now? Like, he might have another level to go up to, and it could be scary.
I hate to correct you, but he's 24 years old, guys.
Yeah,
24.
He's 24.
Even younger than I thought. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and
Jaylen is nuts, man.
No, go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just going to say, he broke the record for Celtics ever to, most points in an opening night. Like, he broke the Celtics record by a wide margin. I think the record was 36, and Brown dropped 46. Like, that's absolutely insane. And I'm honestly excited to see, we've been hyping up Tatum as this, insanely huge superstar, but, I mean, Jaylen Brown might become just as big a superstar. I mean, obviously we can't just say that after one game, but I mean, it looks like he has the potential to do so.
What stuck out to me about the Jaylen Brown performance was his video game shooting numbers. 16 of 30 and 8 of 14 from the 3-point arc. Are you kidding me? And like Seamus said, in Madison Square Garden against New York Knicks, who are, one of the top premier defensive teams in the league, that's a problem. But, we also had a couple other guys who performed well. Grant Williams and Romeo Langford. Grant Williams, 15 points. 9 of those points were in the fourth quarter. 3 straight clutch three-pointers. Romeo Langford off the bench in 22 minutes, 10 points, 4 of 6, 2 of 3 from long range. How do we feel about those guys stepping up when it mattered?
I mean, they're pretty much in the same boat. Like, you go back and watch the film, and for them, they're not supposed to be stars. Like, they're not supposed to be guys with the ball in their hands all the time and playmaking for others. And those are the stars' duties. But for them, it's all about utilizing space and hitting the shots that are given to them. And both of those players did exactly that in game one. I mean, if you look at the film, Grant Williams, I can't tell you how many times they left Grant Williams wide open on the perimeter. And for him, at that point, it's just to hit the shot. For the stars, it's to get the ball to them. And for them, it's just to simply hit shots. Same with Romeo. His utilization of space and confidence in space is just phenomenal compared to where it was last year, even the year before. Because, Romeo came into the league and it seemed like he was a little unsure of himself. And he was one of those players who did have the ball in his hands a lot in college and high school. He's Indiana's top high school leading scorer of all time. Like, that's insane in that state. So coming in, it seems like he was lost, but now he's starting to be integrated into the system, and he's really becoming found.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm really excited to see what Romeo Langford can do now, because we've been talking about we never knew what we had in him. He was always injured. When did he get drafted? 2017, I think, or 2018, one of the two.
Grant Williams, and
Carson Edwards and Tremont Waters.
They were all in the same class. So like Seamus said, they're all in the same boat.
Exactly. It was just we had him, but we never really knew what we had in him. And now that he's healthy and now that he had a training camp, now we can actually see what he has. And I'm really excited to see what Romeo Langford can do this season. Grant Williams, I mean, it's sad that Rob's not here, so we can't ask Rob about how he did. But I honestly liked what I saw out of Grant Williams. He had a little bit of struggle guarding Julius Randle, but Julius Randle he was insane last night. So I guess I can't fault him too much for that. But when it came time to hitting open shots, Grant Williams hit his open shots.
Well, let's stop dwelling on the past, because right now the Celtics have a game in I'd say about 15 minutes away from the tip. And the Celtics, in the first time in 431 days, have a clean slate injury report. Al Horford, yes, he will start tonight. He had missed the past 3 games, 2 preseason games in the season opener due to COVID-19. He is back in the lineup. Ime Udoka has stressed that he's going to try to limit Al's minutes between 20 to 25 minutes tonight. Also, Josh Richardson, who missed the season opener. He was the late scratch, literally about 2 hours before tip with the migraine headache. He is good to go tonight. Marcus Smart, who was on the injury report, is probable with a right knee soreness. He will play tonight, and I'm going to assume he's starting. Ian, you were showing me the starting lineup. Is he in that starting lineup?
Yeah, he is. He's in that starting lineup.
He is. So, boom. And the Celtics get back 2 guys, Josh Richardson and Al Horford, who were arguably the 2 biggest pickups, maybe outside of Dennis Schroeder, for the Celtics this offseason. What are we expecting from Al Horford tonight? Although just 20 to 25 minutes of playing time, what do we expect to see out of him?
Yeah, Al Horford, I mean, I wouldn't expect him to come out like gangbusters, but he has to be pretty fresh. I mean, you come off a whole season of basically not playing and then a whole offseason of not playing. And then now he had COVID and he played 1 game. So now he's coming off of a whole week or 10 days where he wasn't playing. I mean, there really isn't much mileage. I would expect him to, like, I wouldn't expect them to put too many miles on him tonight just because of his age. And you don't want to, you know how you stretch a band, like if you stretch it out like this, slowly it'll stretch. But if you go like that, it might pop. Same thing with Al Horford. You know, you don't want to put too many miles on him tonight and run him too hard on the floor. I expect a light load for him tonight and just be a playmaker. He doesn't have to be someone who, you know, goes out there and scores 20 points, but just someone who keeps the offense moving and keeps everyone involved within the offense.
Yeah, I pretty much just expect him just to, I mean, I'm not sure how COVID affected him, like on his, what am I trying to say? I don't know if he's like is going to affect him like his actual stamina or something, but I mean, I hope he plays just a solid defensive game. I don't think they're going to rely on him a lot offensively. I think the most they're going to do is have him just stand at the top of the key and when they drive in, just kick it back out to him so he can hit the threes. So that's pretty much what I expect from Al tonight.
Now, how about Josh Richardson? Because Josh Richardson is ultimately kind of like Fournier's replacement, right? Where Evan Fournier, he was more of an offensive power. Obviously, we saw how that went the other night. But if Fournier wasn't on, shooting the basketball, what was he giving you? He wasn't really providing you anything, especially down on that defensive end. Other than maybe floor spacing, he wasn't providing you that much. Now, on the other hand, Josh Richardson on the other side, along with floor spacing and shooting, he also has some defensive intensity and somewhat of a vocal leadership. What do we expect from Josh Richardson tonight against the Raptors?
I mean, the defensive end of the floor is exactly it. Sorry, you want to go ahead, Ian?
No, you're good. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, but the defensive end of the floor is where Josh Richardson will make his bread and butter because if you look at Fournier and Josh Richardson was his replacement, but it's almost like they're subbing out offense for defense because I thought about this the other night. I go, were we duped about Fournier? Like, did we need Fournier? Say, because we spent $17 million a year on Smart, and you look at Smart and you look at Fournier, and they're not that far away in terms of what they do on the floor. They just do very different things on the floor. But I feel like, just thinking about it in whole, we do need those defensive guards instead because Fournier, we saw in the Nets series last year, I mean, he was just a complete zero on the defensive end, and that's what Josh Richardson was brought in here to do. And just his intensity in general, I expect him to come out with just all the intensity in the world tonight because, his shot over the preseason didn't look particularly good. I don't know how confident he is in his shot. And so with that being said, it makes all the sense in the world for Josh Richardson to zone in on the defensive end of the floor tonight.
Yeah, Josh Richardson is a defensive menace. I mean, we saw him in that game against Orlando when me and Justin went. Like, he was like intense on the defensive end, and I feel like that's what the team lacked a lot going from last year. And even in the first game against the Knicks, they didn't seem very intense when it came to playing defense. So just having that for Richardson, I feel like if we can get like 10, 15 points out of him, I feel like that's best case scenario for him offensively, but focusing on his defense is probably the most important thing right now.
Well, staying on the topic of defense is our key matchup tonight. Our main key matchup is Fred VanVleet and Marcus Smart. We take a look at the opening night stats. Marcus Smart, 15 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, a block, and 5 of 14 shooting in a loss. Fred VanVleet ultimately struggled. He shot 5 of 20 from the field and had 12 points along with 2 steals and a block as well. This is somewhat of an interesting matchup. Fred VanVleet, obviously a very explosive scorer. So, just like a Evan Fournier or even an RJ Barrett, you see one go through the hoop for Fred VanVleet, you could ultimately see a huge run go on for these Toronto Raptors. Talk to me a little bit about this matchup and why it's so important, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the most important thing. VanVleet is arguably their best player, and Marcus Smart is going to have to, he's going to have the task of having to try to stop him. And I feel like Marcus Smart, if he can just do a good job of just closing out and containing VanVleet for as long as he can, like VanVleet, he's like such a gifted scorer that he's going to find a way to score, no matter how well a defense is. But if he can just stay focused and zone in on VanVleet and pretty much make his life a living hell tonight, I feel like that would be the best thing for the Celtics and Marcus Smart against VanVleet.
Yeah, and for this matchup tonight, if you look at the other matchup we had the other night, I mean, we already talked about it. Guys were going under screens, miscommunicating. If you do that against the Raptors, the Raptors may not be that talented, and I know I guarantee to win, but this Raptors team is going to be well coached. I mean, Nick Nurse, he was coach of the year 2 years ago, and after he lost Kawhi, he brought them to the 1 seed, and even last year was kind of a fluky year for them, but they're going to be a well-coached team, and he's going to see those flaws within the Celtics system the other night and try to exploit them again tonight. So, Marcus Smart being on Fred VanVleet the whole time and communicating with others on switches and on screens, especially, the Raptors have a lot of forwards who are just solid at screen setting. You have OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Siakam's not playing tonight, but Achua and Chris Boucher, all those guys are really good at screening and rolling to the rim. For the Celtics tonight, it's all about communicating and, making sure that they're making their best effort to get over those screens and contest shots, especially with that Marcus Smart and Fred VanVleet matchup.
Well, that's a good point, and that brings us into our 3 keys of the game. Now, there's many keys to the game, but we picked out 3 specific ones. Mine is play relaxed. Play with some pace. Find a pace. Celtics had a lot of turnovers in game 1 and ultimately in the preseason as well. And although it is still early on in the season, only game 2 out of 82, it takes time to adjust, but just play relaxed and move the ball around the perimeter, get the ball movement flowing, and don't think too much about it. Ian, what is your key to the game?
Yeah, my key to the game is match the energy of the crowd. This place is going to be packed. This is going to be the opening game the opening home game for the Celtics this season. And we know how influential the crowd can be when it comes to the Celtics players and how they can feed off the crowd. So I feel like that's going to be the most important thing for the Celtics tonight is just match the energy of the crowd.
And Seamus, how about you? What's your key to the game tonight against the Raptors?
It's just to not let them touch the paint. The Raptors, we've seen it time and time again, especially with this year's team. This year's team is a little bit bigger and less shooting, but in the past, they've been about driving and kicking. They love to touch the paint. They love to create opportunities around the rim and create 3-point opportunities from those other opportunities. And so clogging the lane and staying physical tonight, which, the other night, the Celtics, the Knicks were a plus 18 in points in the paint the other night. That just can't happen tonight again with the Celtics if they want to, blow the Raptors out on opening night. They have to clog the lane. They have to stay physical, and they ultimately just have to make their best effort at just not letting Toronto get in deep.
That's a really good point because, and like I said, this Toronto team. And by the way, I forgot to mention this when we were doing the injury report. Pascal Siakam is out with a shoulder injury. He actually is not supposed to be starting any kind of contact practice until later this week. Or next week, early next week, if you want to go on that. But real quick, because I know this is a little off topic, but I did forget to cover this. Is my fault. How does this game plan change? Because this is the first time we've seen the Raptors without DeRozan, Lowry, and even Pascal Siakam out for them tonight. How do we control this Raptors team tonight?
I feel like they'll take a lot of what they did with when they played them in the preseason. I feel like that's going to be a little bit important to look at, but I don't think it'll be too much of a different game plan because we know how good the Raptors are and how good they can be under Nick Nurse. So I feel like that's going to be Ime Udoka's real challenge is try to instill something where you can like just try to neutralize their offense as much as they can.
Yeah, and I think for the Celtics tonight is, they have to defend the perimeter, but they also have to attack on the perimeter on the other end of the floor. I mean, if you look at Toronto's roster as a whole, they have a lot of good defenders, but a lot of questionable perimeter defenders. And if the Celtics can get some perimeter opportunities tonight, particularly, we saw the other night where we drive and kick a lot nowadays too, which we didn't do last year under Brad Stevens, or really never did under Brad Stevens. If we can get on the perimeter tonight and create some opportunities from outside, I mean, it would blow the game open for the Celtics.
Yeah, this is something I kind of wrote up on the script. I think it's kind of fun. We've never really done one of these. I only have 3 of them, and since we are getting kind of closer to tip anyway, it's something we can kind of little talk about, but have fun with it at the same time. Over under predictions. I have 3.
Ooh, these are always tough.
Yes, these are.
Vegas is always like right there.
Now, cut me some slack because these might not be the toughest, but this is the first time I figured, it's something fun. So, we'll keep track of this as the season goes on. And eventually, when Rob joins us, we'll include Rob in these. But right now, tonight, Rob Williams over under 3 blocks. Last outing, he had 5 blocks. Over under 3 blocks.
It's just so ridiculously high for a player to have an over-under of 3 blocks, but it's Robert Williams. So
yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I mean, I always this seems like an under for me, but I don't know. The paint's going to be pretty. Yeah, I
might be a little more difficult than I thought
this
it
is
might
tough.
have been, huh?
Yeah.
I could see Robert getting over 3 blocks. I told my friend to bet on it the other night, and I think he had over 1, but.
You're going over.
Yeah.
So you're going over, Seamus?
I'll go over, sure.
I'm gonna take the under just because I know he had 5 blocks last game and that was absolutely insane, but I don't know. I'm feeling the under. He can obviously get more than that, but I'm feeling the under. I feel like he gets 2 or he gets right at 3. That's what I'm feeling.
2.5.
2.5.
Wait,
yeah, that's the thing.
I'm not the best at these betting things, so kind of inform me here. If he gets 3 blocks, do we all win? Is it a win-win? How does that work necessarily? How would you think it works? Even if you don't know, what would you guess?
It's a push if he gets exactly 3.
Okay, so we can kind of push it either way.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
But usually the line it'll be 2.5 or 3.5 or something like that. So there's no push and
that makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
Now I understand both of you, but I'm gonna go over. And 90% of it is confidence, and the other 10% of it is because I have him in fantasy, and I really need him to do really good tonight.
That's a good reason.
That is a perfectly valid reason.
Now, Jason Tatum over under 8 free throw attempts. The last outing, he only had 5. This is something that we've kind of worried about Jason Tatum. We really, don't want him to settle for 30 jump shots. We want him to put his head down and a drive to the basket, especially in moments where he's struggling. Over or under 8 free throw attempts?
I'm going to go with the over. Just because he had such a bad game to start the season. I feel like he's going to be determined to do as much as he can, which means he's going to drive in the paint. And, the Raptors love playing defense in the paint. So even though the new rules about fouls are in play, I still see him getting over 8 free throw attempts tonight.
Which, just by saying, Evan Fournier learned the hard way. I think it was one of the first plays of the game. He leaned in.
Oh,
I think it was Smart or who was it? Romeo Smith. Yeah, and oh my gosh, he was not happy. Seamus, over under 8 free throw attempts for Jason Tatum tonight. Like I said, last outing, opening night, he had 5.
I'm taking the over, but there's 2 factors I have to consider here. Number 1, he had a terrible game the other night. He had 4 or 5 free throws the other night. I mean, that's just absolutely atrocious for Tatum, and I know that's something that he has zoned in on his game since 2018. He's been working with Drew Hanlon on free throws. I mean, if you take 10 free throws a game, you could add 10 points to your point per game average. Like, that's just ridiculous. However, like you guys said, the rules change, and we kind of saw this a little bit with Tatum in the preseason when he did play. It's like there were a couple of times where he kind of lunged into his defender, didn't get the call, and then threw up his arms. Like, I don't know if more of that is going to transpire, or the refs tonight may be a little bit nicer to him. You know, I don't know what happens there with Tatum. Maybe he finds other ways to draw a foul, but I'm still taking the over. 8 free throws. I mean, he had a terrible game the other night. He'll be focused in on getting more than 8 free throws tonight.
I'm going over, and I really don't think there's any more explanation because you two said it perfectly. I mean, he had a rough game. He had one of his worst career games, maybe his second worst career game, in his 4 years in the, maybe even 5 years in the league. But I'm going to take the over. Thank God. Please, I hope it's over because I think he's going to play with a sense of urgency tonight, and I think it kind of matches your key to the game, Ian, where I feel like he has to match the energy with this crowd. Flex some muscles, pump the fist, high five Paul Pierce on the sideline after a big shot because Paul Pierce is back in attendance tonight. I think Jason Tatum is going to be ultra aggressive tonight. Hopefully that ultra aggressive is towards the basket more than between the 20 to 30 foot jump shot. Now the final one, Fred VanVleet. Over or under 25 points tonight. Opening night, he had 12 points. He also struggled, so he's also due for a big game. He went 5 of 20 in his last outing and scored 12 points. Over or under, Ian, for Fred VanVleet?
I'm going to take the under. And I feel like he's still going to drop like 20 or like maybe like 20, like 3. Like that's what I'm thinking. I don't think he gets to 25. I'm going to take the under. Just like no stats or anything to back this up, just because that's what I feel like. That's literally what I'm going with.
Yeah, I don't want to judge too much on their first game against the Wizards, but it's not like the Wizards are, that great of a defensive team, and they were only able to score 83 points on them, and like that's literally almost 3/4 of 100. And we're talking if Fred VanVleet scores 25, that's a whole fourth of a 100. So I'm gonna go the under tonight. It's possible he, comes out and starts flamethrowing on us and just scores like 35 or something because that's just how the Celtics roll. They love to just give stars just awesome games sometimes. Yeah. So that could happen, but I am taking the under tonight. I just, the Raptors offense to me thus far just hasn't looked, great in 5 games they've played now, including the preseason. So I'm taking the under.
I'm also taking the under now. I feel like it's going to be a very nail-biting under where he's scoring 20 to 24 points and he's at the free throw line and the ball spins around the net about 6 times and then rolls out. And I feel like it's going to be one of those types of things. But I'm going to go under. So we're going to keep track of these. We'll bring them in the post-game show and we'll let you guys know how we did. But yeah, Celtics and Raptors just moments away from the tip. We'll see you back here for the post-game show. I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. I'm just kind of excited, guys. What do we expect here tonight? No bias, honesty. What do we expect? I'm expecting a Celtics win just because of the firepower kind of. I think they're thinking about this New York game. What are we thinking?
I'm expecting Jason Tatum to have a good game. I'm not saying he's going to drop 60 or anything, but I have him scoring at least 30 points tonight. I have him trying to make up for, the lack of anything against the Knicks. So I see Jason Tatum having a good game tonight. That's going to be my thing.
Yeah, and for me, I think this could be, I said it the other night, our get our feet wet game, kind of get us into the season, get us into the rhythm of things. Like this just feels like a game where it's a Friday night, it's at the Garden. Like these games used to be like popping, okay? They used to be popping. Friday night at the Garden, we play a bad team. I remember one time we played the Wizards after some 4-game losing streak back in 2018-19. It was like, finally, we get a win Friday night. It was the greatest night of the season that season, it feels like. But now, like, I don't really see a way where this Raptors team beats us. They don't have as much talent as us. We saw them in the preseason already, and that game wasn't even supposed to be close either. I mean, it was a 2-point game, but I mean, we let our foot off the gas however many times in that game. If we just do it for a full 48 tonight, I mean, it could be an easy win for us. No bias. I'm just looking at it how it is.
Well, that's all I have for you guys for Celtics pregame live. Again, Celtics and Raptors moments away from tip-off live at the TD Garden. Catch the game on NBC Sports Boston. Please come right back here moments after the final buzzer. Justin, I'm Justin. That's Ian. That's Seamus. We will see you guys again moments after the final buzzer for Celtics postgame live. Let's go Celtics.
Yes,
Go Celtics.